I took a deep breath, closed my eyes and tried to hide the fear and pain I felt as he touched me. Not a single part of me liked this. He was nice and all, but I couldn't go through that again. Anything but that. You tensed. The Alpha King commented. I pulled away from him as he moved me off his lap. His eyes were staring intensely at me, and I couldn't help but cower away from him. I didn't want to show my fear, but I was exhausted, so my body was betraying me. Are you hurt? The Alpha King demanded, his eyes narrowing at the thought. I shook my head no, immediately. I knew how this would go. I would be in so much trouble if I was honest. I had been through this scenario before. Kinsley would ask me if I was hurt, and if I showed the pain, she'd say she'd give me something to cry about. Every time it was worse than whatever the first pain had been. Grace, you can tell me if something hurts, okay? I can help. The Alpha King tried again in a softer voice. I shook my head again and turned toward the window. I couldn't remember the last time I had been in a car. I had been maybe 7 or 8, and my stepmom, Luna Ava. It had been one of the rare occurrences she had talked my father into letting me out of the house. It had been my birthday, and we went and got ice cream, and I had been able to get a new book. It was one of my favorite memories. This car though, moved faster than I remembered. Everything passed by my window in a blur, and it made my tummy turn. If there was anything in my stomach, I probably would have thrown up, but it had been a few days since I had had more than a few slices of bread to eat. I was glad that the Alpha King had stopped talking. It was one less thing that I had to focus on. As everything rushed by, exhaustion filled every piece of my soul, and I could feel it deep in my bones. I wasn't used to sitting still this long. My eyelids grew heavy, and I fought sleep with every ounce of my being. This was not the place to drift off. I didn't know these people. I didn't know where I was going. I couldn't just give in. Who knows what the punishment for such a thing would be, but I didn't want to find out. My eyes fluttered open as a pair of strong arms wrapped around my knees and under my shoulders. I tried not to flinch in pain, but I couldn't help but gasp in surprise. The Alpha King was carrying me. He didn't even seem to hesitate to pick up a lowly criminal such as myself. What kind of man was he? He wasn't at all like I had expected so far. You're awake. He stated the obvious. I nodded, burying my face into his shirt before quickly stopping. I might have fallen asleep in his presence, and he might have decided to carry me, but that didn't mean things weren't going to go south real quick with one wrong move. Did you sleep well? He asked. I was surprised by his question, but I nodded again. I had slept better than I normally did. Normally, I had nightmares and woke up screaming, which then in turn would cause Kinsley or Adrian or one of their other minions to come and punish me for the commotion. I shuddered at the memory, however the Alpha King either didn't notice or pretended not to. Should I keep carrying you or would you like to walk? He asked, his voice husky with something I didn't recognize. I immediately showed him 2 fingers, meaning I wanted the second option, and I hoped he understood. He frowned at first, but then complied with my wishes, gently setting me on my feet. The relief I felt was immediate now that there was less pressure on my back. I sighed and looked around. I had forgotten the very presence I was in, the Alpha King's. And this wasn't just some random pack house. This was a small castle. A mansion to the utmost degree. And it was stunning. The exterior was a pale gray stone full of windows and covered in vines. We stood in the driveway, but on each side was lined with the most exquisite landscape. Bushes, trees and flowers, all shaped and perfectly positioned to be the most aesthetically pleasing. I had never seen something so beautiful in my life. Do you like it? The Alpha King looked nervous as he ran his hand through his hair, his eyes meeting mine. I gave him a small smile and nodded. I loved it. But then I frowned. It would be so hard to maintain though. I had no idea how to shape everything so nicely or which flowers would grow well here. And the house was huge. I couldn't possibly keep up with everything that needed to be done. I took a shaky deep breath and tried to calm my nerves. Whatever was going to happen, will happen, and I would handle it the way I've always had. The Alpha King frowned at me, but again, didn't comment. Let me show you the inside, he tried. I nodded but found myself not really paying attention to anything as we walked. Everything looked expensive, and I would ruin it all with one touch. This was the game, wasn't it? To see how much trouble I could get in on my first day in my new, could it even be called my home? Grace. A sharp voice drew me back to the present. We were back in the gorgeous, ginormous foyer that we started in that held a velvet couch and statues and what I could only assume to be very expensive art pieces. I looked up at the Alpha King, his eyes softening a little as they met mine. I know this has been very overwhelming. The words seemed hard for him to say. But here, you are not a servant or a slave. You are not a criminal. You are here to be my bride, Grace. We will be married, and I will mark you. I stepped away from the Alpha King in shock, but he grabbed my hand, pulling me back to him, just leaving a little bit of distance. Why would he want me? I was nothing. I was worse than nothing. I was mute. I was a criminal. I was undeserving of any good thing ever. So why? Did he truly not believe Kinsley's story? Or was there more at play here? Was this a cruel joke and this wasn't the Alpha King all? I was sure Alpha King Reese could sense my turmoil. I was not fit to be anyone's bride, let alone the Alpha King's, but he didn't say anything. He just led me on, up the steps and through another glorious hallway to a door. He held his hand up to a small pad on the door, and it made a buzzing of acknowledgement as the door opened by itself. I jumped back in surprise, but the Alpha King kept a firm grip on my hand and pulled me through the doorway. To my surprise, 2 servants followed us into the room. They bowed at the Alpha King, and I realized I probably should have been doing that too every time I saw him. These are your personal servants, Alana and Cam, he started, not looking at anyone in particular. They will take care of your every need. They have come to help you bathe and turn down your sheets for the night. I pulled my hand from him, knowing that I could not keep the look of alarm off my face. I shook my head back and forth, trying to convey the message that I did not want anyone to get near me. I was capable. I was fine. No. This couldn't be happening. Relax, Grace. The Alpha King tried. This is a good thing. He attempted to grab my hand again and I twisted away from him. He froze. His face paled, and I knew what I had just shown. Are you bleeding? He demands, his eyes never leaving my back even as I twist further away from him. I shake my head, trying to hide my injuries. This couldn't be happening. Let me see it, Grace. His voice is hard, and I couldn't help but cower away from him. I shook my head again. I had no intention of showing my scars in front of everyone. Sensing that I had no intention of showing anybody anything, he ordered everyone else to get out with his alpha aura, and I dropped to my knees to submit. When the door closed behind them, he dropped in front of me, kneeling so we were eye level. I'm sorry, he whispered, brushing a stray strand of my very messy hair out of my face. I didn't mean to use my alpha aura on you. At your pace, I just want to see your injuries, so I can help. You're going to be my bride, remember? His hand cradled my face, and I couldn't help but lean into his touch before I realized what I was doing. No. I can't be doing that. He might say that he wants me now, but he won't want me once he sees my scars. It's okay. You're safe here. He said so gently I was starting to believe it. We sat like that for a few minutes, my breathing slowing down despite myself. Once I was calmer, he pulled me to my feet. I felt his hand move my hair out of his way, and he turned me, so my back was facing him. His hand lingered at my neckline but waited for my permission. I knew I couldn't escape this, so I slowly nodded, just once, but that was all it took. I felt him slowly unzip my first layer, and then my second, before finally undoing my last defense. He had only pulled each about halfway down, but I could tell he was surprised by the layers, however he didn't say a word about them. I knew the moment he saw my skin. The grip he had on my dress increased, and he grabbed me with his other arm. I knew what he was seeing. The many scars and bruises from the past. The fresh whip marks from today, the sudden air on them made them sting. You lied to me, he growled. Suddenly, his hands were ripping at the rest of my dresses, all but shredding them off me. I couldn't yell. He had been so gentle, and then to just lose it like that. How could he? How could I have trusted him? I was so sure he was going to ruin me too. Who? He demanded. Who did this to you? I just stood there and cried, practically naked in front of him. All my cuts, bruises and scars on display. I was hiding nothing anymore. All I wanted was to curl up, but I couldn't force myself to move. The Alpha King lifted my chin, so I was looking at him. His eyes looked remorseful as he grabbed a soft blanket from the bed and wrapped it around me as I sunk to the floor. I'm sorry for scaring you, he said gently, taking the spot next to me on the ground. But those aren't just one-time wounds, Gracie. Those are a lifetime of hurt. Was it your sister, Luna Kinsley, and Alpha Adrian? I started to hyperventilate. No. Telling would just get me in trouble. Shoo, he soothed, running his hand through my super tangled hair. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. He was going to send me back. However, he didn't say that. He sat with me till I was all cried out. His thumb running circles on my arms, and I felt so tired again. I don't know for sure who hurt you, Grace, but I promise you, you are safe here. I know I scared you, and I invaded your privacy, but you are safe here. I will never hurt you. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? No one had ever promised me safety before. How could I possibly believe it after tonight? I'm going to go, the Alpha King said after a while. But the maids are going to run you a bath and get you fresh clothes, and we will deal with your wounds in the morning as they've stopped bleeding for now, and I don't want to make this worse. He looked hesitant at the last part, but he didn't do anything to show me he was thinking anything different. He stood up and stretched, and I marveled at his body before I realized what I was doing. He smirked though, which gave me the impression that he knew exactly what I was doing. However, he didn't comment. He just moved across the room and grabbed something before heading back toward me. Here. I took the small chalkboard hesitantly and looked at him in confusion. Write whatever you need or want on this board. I will check it and update it daily. I gaped at him, but he didn't wait for my response. He just turned and walked out, leaving me alone for the first time in this new house. A servant from earlier peeped in, but didn't say a word to me. She just ran my bath and left me alone with my TS, and I didn't know how to feel about that. Once I was sure no one else was coming in, I climbed into the bath, the water cold from how long I had waited to get in. My new injuries stung in the water, and I just sat there for a while as memories of home flashed through my mind. I forced myself to get out when I started to shiver. I crawled into my bed, grateful to still have it. And the last thing I remember before I fell asleep was that I felt like I was laying on a cloud. I opened my eyes slowly. I was afraid it was all a dream that wasn't real. But no. I was in the comfiest bed I had ever had the privilege of sleeping on. The sun was shining through the curtain, and I realized for the first time I could remember, no one had come in and interrupted my sleep. I couldn't remember having any nightmares either. It was bizarre, but I loved it. I startled. There was a simple knock on the door, but I wasn't used to that either. In my old pack, people just burst in all the time. I sat up slowly, letting the blankets pull up my legs as one of the same servants from yesterday peeped her head in. Oh good, you're awake, Mississippi. She smiled. Her blonde hair was pulled into a French braid bun and she looked to be about my own age. I nodded, but didn't say anything as the girl opened the door revealing a large tray of food, leaving my eyes to nearly bulge from their sockets. The girl laughed, and I offered her a small, tight smile. I'm Alana, by the way, not sure if you remembered from yesterday, but I am here to assist you with anything you need. The Alpha King is downstairs waiting for us, so as much as I want you to relax and take your time, we are on a bit of a time crunch. Alana finally took a breath before continuing and thrusting the tray into me. You start eating, and I will start your bath and lay out your clothes. Sound good? I nodded again, looking at the food hesitantly. There were so many options, and no one had ever given me so many voices before or asked me if a plan sounded good. It was weird. Alana chatted away about things that had no real importance as she scurried all around the room, and I found comfort in her presence. She was a ray of sunshine that I wasn't used to being around. I didn't know work could be fun like that, and I didn't know how to feel about all the attention. I squirmed nervously after I took a few bites of some random foods. I didn't care for most of it, but I liked the biscuit, and that was about all my stomach could handle. Are you done, miss? I nodded and carefully moved the tray to the side table and stood up with the blanket wrapped around me. Luckily for me, Alana seemed to get that I wanted my privacy and left without another word. I didn't waste any time and got myself cleaned and ready for the day as quickly as I could. I didn't want to keep the Alpha King waiting too long and I felt as though I had. I quickly ran a comb through my hair and braided it. My back twinged with all the movement, but I had had worse, and that's what I kept reminding myself. I had never worn any outfit as nice as the one that was laid out for me, either. It was a simple blue dress with flowers on it that had long sleeves and came to just above my knees. My usual dresses usually were longer, but it would do. I was glad to find Alana just outside my room as I made my way there. I had gotten a tour yesterday, but I didn't remember a single place I was shown. My nerves were on fire as I made my way to wherever the Alpha King was. What did he want from me? He had said he wanted to marry me, but was that really his intention? He was by all accounts famous, and I knew more beautiful people than myself had thrown themselves at him in the past, so I kept coming back to the same question, why me? Grace. His rough voice brought me out of my head. I looked at him, my eyes wide with fear. Come on, we've got an appointment to get to. I frowned. An appointment. Whatever for? As if sensing my confusion as we walked, he said, we're going to the doctor's to get your wounds looked at. I want a full physical for you. There were marks on your body of all different ages. I want to know who and why. I stumbled over my feet, and he reached out and righted me without even looking. The doctor's office was on property. I didn't remember my old pack having a doctor on property, but maybe it was standard practice. Or maybe since he was the Alpha King, he could do anything he wanted, like having a doctor so close. We walked into the very sterile building, and I jumped when a ringing noise came from Reese's body. "It's just a phone," someone from behind the counter called out. "No need to be afraid." The Alpha King shot him a look, but didn't say anything as he answered his phone. The guy behind the counter looked like a younger version of the Alpha King. He had the same dark brown hair, but it was cut closer to his scalp, but his eyes were darker than the Alpha King's. "Go on, Grace," the Alpha King said gently. "I'll meet up with you after, okay? I have to take this." I nodded, but it didn't ease my fear of going to show my most vulnerable self to a stranger. "I don't bite." The guy laughed freely. "I'm Dr. Sonnet, Reese's favorite brother. Aren't you a cute little thing? However, you can call me Sawyer." I didn't say anything, I just followed him back to the exam room. I hated how he seemed to think my presence was a joke, but maybe I was. He got the exam started quickly, but he didn't stop talking the whole time. "You know, my brother has brought a lot of women home from his travels, and quite a few of them have ended up in my hospital, but you are definitely the most injured. What happened to you?" I didn't respond. My mind was too busy reeling in my memories. I had heard that the Alpha King had been engaged before. He had been seen with numerous women over the years, and some he was rumored to have made disappeared. I gulped. Was I really next? The doctor seemed to laugh at my reaction. "You didn't think you were the first now, did you?" "No, for a long time, every time he went to a new pack, he brought back a new girl. Blondes, brunettes, redheads, it didn't matter much." He gave me a once-over as he grabbed his stethoscope. "But I will say you are the first to look like you, so maybe you'll be different. He seems to really like you." Dr. Sonnet teased when he sensed my mood change. I didn't say anything. There wasn't anything to say. I was broken and he would lose interest soon. Would I be able to change enough to keep his interest? Should I even try? I wasn't made to be Luna material, let alone Queen Luna. My thought train had me feeling sick. As soon as I could, I bolted out of there. To my disappointment, the Alpha King wasn't in the lobby waiting for me, but it didn't matter. I wandered until I found my way back and locked myself in the room I had left this morning, pondering over what my fate would be and if taking care of my wounds was really worth the time they'd take to heal. I was laying in bed staring at the wall when I heard the door to my room open. I didn't turn to look, but I knew exactly who it was as he sat down on the edge of the bed, letting the silence linger over us. I didn't move, and he didn't say anything for a long while. Eventually I felt his hand on my head, and he began running his fingers through my hair. If I hadn't been so worried about my death, I probably would have found it peaceful or maybe even noticed his brooding mood, but I was too wrapped in my head to notice much. "I know you're awake, I can hear your heartbeat," the Alpha King said finally after about 30 minutes. "I came to ask about how your doctor's visit went." For a moment, I thought about continuing to pretend he didn't exist. But before I could stop myself, I reached out and grabbed the medications and rolled over toward him to show him all the things I really didn't understand, nor could I find the motivation to even try to. The Alpha King looks at the medication and then at me, and my stomach does a little flip. He then handed me the chalkboard he left me the day before. I wasn't sure exactly what to do with it, and I'm not exactly sure what he expected. I was raised on nothing about me screamed literate. I knew a few words, but I had no idea how to spell what he wanted me to. But I used to like to draw, at least before my stepmother had died, and I had a little more freedom. It was dark, and I couldn't see well, but I decided to give it a try. First, I drew the general shape of the medication and a question mark. Then I drew the salve the best I could and added a question mark to that as well, hoping he would know what I meant. He looked at my drawings in the dark. I knew he could see better than I could with his werewolf eyes. They had stronger senses than humans. I watched his face frown as he looked at my drawings before he abruptly got up and walked to the bathroom. I froze. Was I supposed to follow him? I apparently didn't because he came back out seconds later with a glass of water and stood in front of me. "This one, you swallow," he told me. "Put the pill on your tongue and then take a sip of water and that will be that." He's probably worried about infection if he gave you that. I frowned but did as he said. The pill had a funny taste, but it went down pretty smoothly. "And the other stuff, it goes on your back to help them heal faster," he explained gently. "Can I help you put it on?" I hesitated for a second, but relented since I didn't have a better way to put it on. The Alpha King, Reese, looked me in the eyes as he put the salve on his fingers, and a chill ran through my body. "Shoo," he whispered. "This might sting, but it will help, I promise." I closed my eyes as he began to trace my open wounds. He was right, it did hurt, but the cooling sensation and his gentle touch made it bearable, and my heart fluttered nearly out of my chest. But then his hand started to trace the old wounds. The ugly marks I bared because of my awful half-sister. Reminders of the place I had only just left and could go back to at any time. Or worse. My body immediately betrayed me and began to tremble. I met his eyes with a pleading look in mine, begging him to stop, but it seemed to have the opposite effect on him. His face morphed into disappointment right before my eyes. "Do you always put on this pitiful act for everyone or just me?" he demanded as he moved away from me. I couldn't push away the hurt that immediately consumed my chest at his words. Confusion filled me without a chance for me to even get my bearings. Pitiful? Act? Did he believe Kinsley's story after all? Was it now my time to disappear? My heart was racing a mile a minute at the thoughts as I tried to not let it show. I was going to die. I could at least die brave despite the tears filling my eyes. "I sent people to your little pack," he continued. "I wanted to know more about how could be littered in so many marks. I wanted to hear their why and decided if I believed them or not. But do you know what I found, Gracie?" I hated the way he said my name just then. I hated the anger in his voice. It only made my fear worse. It was completely and utterly emptied. There was not a soul to be found, anywhere. They deserted. "Do you want to tell me why they would have deserted like that, Grace?" I panicked. I had no idea where they would have gone or why. I had never been allowed to leave the house, and it's not like they told me secrets. I was hated. I was worse than an enemy. I was a traitor. His hand gripped my chin, forcing me to look him in the eyes. "Now tell me, Grace, are you a part of a conspiracy? A plot to overthrow the kingdom?" I shook my head back and forth. No. Of course not. I had never been a part of anything of the sort. That would have meant I mattered. I did not matter. "What is your role in this?" he tried to demand. "I need to know, Grace." The way he said my name again sent shivers down my spine again, but not in the good way. This was the Alpha King, and he would dispose of me without a second thought. I hadn't proved anything to him. I had no role, but it wouldn't matter. He would never believe me. I was nothing. I was worse than nothing. I was a traitor. I was wolfless. I had never mattered to anyone before. But a small voice in my head begged for him to believe me. I wanted him to believe me. I shook my head slowly. No. I did not have anything to do with my pack. And I hoped that this time, he would hear all my unsaid words. Thanks everyone for tuning in and listening to this fantastic story. Just a quick heads up, all the books featured on this channel come from Reading, your ultimate hub for staying on top of web novel updates, so you'll never miss a chapter again. I've already dropped the link to this book in the comments section below, so jump in, share your thoughts, and chat with fellow readers.